This is the Bold City Podcast.
Hey, what's up? I'm Jason Masters. I am the lead pastor at Bold City Church, and I want to welcome you to the Bold City Podcast. This one is specifically aimed towards men, and I got a very special guest, and I'm not just saying that. He really is special. El Jefe, as he's known in Guatemala, but Jeff Hall, who is my uncle. He is Tiffanys' uncle, and unfortunately for him, he inherited me because of Tiffanys' amazing decision-making to say yes to me. I invited him on here. One, you're going to hear in just a minute our relationship and friendship and familyship and all that, but I invited him here because he is a Christian business owner who is spiritually leading his family, leads a small group. He's a point man in our men's ministry. And I love it because now I don't just have a pastor or somebody who does ministry all the time vocationally, in a sense, somebody who is a lay minister. I wanted us to be able to hear from somebody like that because I think there's a lot of stuff in your life that is applicable for men. All right. So all that being said, out of the way, earliest memory of me, what do you got?
Earliest memory is when you were shellacking or staining or what the church in Fernandina would be.
That's right.
That ceiling.
What was that church? Do you remember the name of it? It's an old church.
Yeah. Super old church. One of the oldest ones.
Super
in
cool
Fernandina.
looking.
Super cool. But that's the earliest memory with the dude y'all were working with that said Bill all the time.
Yeah.
Yeah.
From Kill Bill, the movie. So, yeah. So, what Jeff's alluding to is brother Ben. So, my other uncle owned a painting company, and I spent a summer working with him before I went to college. And he had this really cool, like, historical church, I guess you would say, in Fernandina Beach that he was refinishing all the woodwork in there. So, I mean, hand sanders for days, dude.
Yeah.
The roofs, the even the pews, we redid the pews.
The roof was so intricate. Like I just remember
Yes.
y'all hand sanding all of that. Yeah,
It's like a 3-month job.
Yeah,
it was
sure.
forever.
For sure.
So that was cool. We've also been to a ton of football games together.
Yep.
You want to tell the people about the Florida-Tennessee game
I mean, that was
when we were in Knoxville?
Yeah. Here's what I really like about Pastor Jason is like he schedules a marriage conference around the Florida-Tennessee game in Gatlinburg. When we went. So
That's right.
That was awesome. But yeah, we
Favor of the Lord.
yeah. I thought he was going to get beat up because of one particular Tennessee fan.
That's right. But was I doing anything?
And you were doing nothing. But he
Nothing.
kept looking at you and, pounding his hand into his yeah.
Yeah.
Exactly. And like you're looking at me, I'm looking at you like, what is this dude's deal, man? But yeah.
But it was such a bad game. All that was done in about 5 minutes because Florida was already starting to run away.
We left at halftime and
It was pretty bad.
Good. It was bad.
But yeah, dude definitely had it out for me, and we couldn't understand why.
Right.
So, by the way, really cool stadium. Would encourage anybody to visit that, even if you're not a Tennessee fan, for a game one time.
Absolutely.
Pretty loud, wasn't it?
It was probably the loudest stadium I've been in, and even
For
like,
5 minutes.
For 5 minutes.
For 5 minutes.
But like them forming the tee and coming out, it was cool.
Super cool.
Like it was cool. Yeah.
Yeah, and so that was pretty fun. But man, we do family trips together. All kind of stuff, holidays. But the main thing that's been really cool for probably the past 7 years, I think we've been really encouraging to each other in our walks and our marriages. One of the things I remember is 2015, probably one of the most pivotal years of my life, walking through overwhelming depression, just being fear-bound. I just remember you and your amazing wife, Jenny, just coming alongside Tiff and I, encouraging us, praying over us. I remember being at your house in the bedroom and we throwing down in prayer, but
Absolutely.
just not throwing in the towel, not even necessarily thinking the worst, but you're like, hey, something's going on. We're just going to walk through it with them.
Right.
But that's part of who you guys are too. I've watched you do that with a lot of people. What makes you walk through tough situations with people?
I think that I've been in some tough situations and people have done it for me, so
It's been modeled for you.
right. So I think I'm good at putting myself in their situation. Like, that could be me. There's no sin out there. There's nothing that anybody else is wrapped up in out there that I couldn't be in, because I could. I mean, I really could. So just empathizing with people, you know, and like being the person that I would want to have help me in that situation, you know.
That's huge. I think also you said something like, if you can get a vision and see yourself in their situation, it'll birth compassion for them, and you'll want to show up and help them in some way. Well, I appreciate that about both you and Jenny, because it's meaningful. It's impacted me, but I know of a number of other people that I've watched you guys do that for, and it's pretty cool. And I've watched you do it through your business and stuff like that, which brings me to a really good question that I think would be tremendous for people to hear this testimony, hear what you have to say. I think they'll glean a ton from it. You had a pretty good job when I met you, working at the paper mill.
Right.
Working shift work, but it was a good paying job, good benefits, all of that. Not once, but twice, you have completely risked everything to get out of the boat and trust God with a dream and a vision that He's given you. Can you just tell that story a little bit?
Yeah, I think, you know, over the last, since 2008, I guess my claim to fame kind of thing is I've left two $80,000 a year jobs, you know, where you go from literally having that to zero in the very next day, you know. So the mill job, very good paying job, but there's always a sacrifice, and that sacrifice is time with your family. I only had one Sunday off a month. Couldn't really do the things that I know that I'm called to do, that we're all called to do. And I'm not saying if you work at a mill job and you work shift work, quit, but like,
Right.
When you're having those sleepless nights for 3 months and you know something's stirring and you wake up at 3 o'clock in the morning and you can't go back to sleep and you're praying about it and God's talking to you, like, you have to listen. So walked away from that, started a glass company with a family member. Did that very successfully for 3 years. Jenny worked there also. Things, you know, shifted in that kind of relationship too, and more sleepless nights, more waking up at 3 o'clock in the morning. Like literally something that you went through too, like you can just feel it, like, you know, tenseness in your neck
Something's
and your
not
back,
right.
like something ain't right. Just something ain't right. So decided to, you know, to step out on my own. And, you know, that job paid almost the same exact thing as the mill job did. So, you know, Jenny was at home, and I came home that day and said, "Hey, we're out on our own again." You know, she's like, "Okay." That's one awesome thing about her. She's never freaked out. You know, she just always trusted me.
And she's a planner. She likes to know.
Yes.
She wants to know what's happening.
Before I came to this podcast, she said, "Can I ask you a few questions about some lingering things we have in the business?" And she had a whole list. So I had to answer all those questions before I left. So
Before you got your hall pass.
Yes. So she's a planner. Yeah.
So we go from not one, but two faithful, consistent, work is there, business is good. However, something's not right in both situations. Really, usually something that impacts, one, your spiritual journey, where you are with God, and then two, your family life. Right. And so you knew, all right, it's time to transition, and you didn't have any guarantees. You just did it, right?
Right.
And so what are a couple things, if somebody was contemplating or sensing some of the sleepless nights, a little bit of anxiety and like just discernment, something's not right here. What are a couple things that they need to do to put things in motion to navigate what's next for them?
Obviously prayer. Like,
it's a good one.
Just pray. Like, pray. Get in your secret place. Ask God specific questions. Like, that's what I did. I didn't just say, "Lord, if it's your will." Like, ask Him specifically, "God, am I supposed to leave this job?" Name the job, you know. So get specific with God, because He's very specific. I mean, read through the Bible. He's very specific.
Noah,
you know?
when he built the ark, right? He was very intentional about how to build it.
Right.
He's into details.
Yeah, for sure. So get specific with Him. Be faithful. So we're listening to God, and then listen to people. Listen to godly people around you, not the world, the right people. So I'm talking with you. I'm talking with Ben. I'm talking with Ronnie. I'm talking with Brandon, like my core group of guys, and saying, hey, this is what I'm thinking. This is what I'm going through. This is what I'm praying about. Getting them on board with you. You know what I mean? So
yeah, getting them involved.
Correct.
Just having that circle of wisdom.
Right.
Man, there's something you said that I think I'd love to hear your thoughts on it. That I think people use it as a cop-out often. The simple prayer, well, Lord, if it's your will.
Right. There's a common will of God. I mean,
A big
I don't know what your will is, well, we know what it is, the specific, but then there's specific will for your life and my life. And that can be different. We know what the greater will is. We know what the overall will is, but like how I'm doing it and how you're doing it can look totally different. The things he's asking you to do and sacrifice can be totally different than me, know. So that's, and I get it, that blanket prayer of God, if it's your will, but like, just get specific. Ask him. If I was going to ask my earthly father for something, I would ask him specifically for said thing, not just, hey, Dad, this is what I really want, but, just get me whatever, I'll be fine with it. Like, ask him specifically.
One thing I know you asked, because we talked about it, more time with your family.
Correct.
Which is huge.
Number one thing.
I think a lot of guys are often willing to sacrifice that under the banner of I'm a provider, and I don't think we really count the cost. Like, all right, I might have more resources or be able to provide more things for my family. However, I'm not there with my family like
Correct.
I should be. And so I think, talk about that a little bit, and why you were motivated to pray for more time with your family.
Most men in today's society, we get too hung up on the provider thing. So the more money I bring into the house, the better man and husband I am. But like, that's not true. It's not true. Like, Jenny literally said to me, I'll live in a tent with you to have more time with you. Like, the stuff I don't care about. Like, I want you and the kids want you. We want time with you. So that was huge, knowing that if we do have some hardships and we have to cut back on stuff, and we did those things, she just wants me. She wants time with me. Same thing as the father, right? Yeah. Like, he just wants time with us, Yeah. So it's a trade-off. Like, if you're caught up in that cycle of I'm providing, like, but your sons and daughters and your wife are longing for you to just spend time with them, like, they're going to get that from somewhere else, man, because they need that,
Yeah, they need that male leadership
Correct.
in the house.
Correct.
And I think you and I have talked about this before too. I think there can be a dad that's in the home and still be an absent father.
Correct.
And I think providing, that's a foundational principle for biblical manhood, for men, right? We get that. But I think, man, providing and having a ton of stuff is two different things.
Correct.
And dude, I know I don't want my wife and I don't want my kids. I don't want somebody else entertaining my wife and I don't want someone else leading my kids.
Right.
Because I'm working all the time.
Right.
I never forget what Billy Graham said one time, and this really struck me because of the ministry and evangelism. They said, hey, if you could go back in your ministry and change something, what would you change? He said, I'd spend more time at home with my wife and kids.
Yeah.
And they were like, really? Because you've led thousands, millions of people to the Lord. I was like, yeah. I mean, he said, but I mean, I might point to them, but I don't change them. God changes them. He could use somebody else in some situations. But I thought that was huge. I was like, man, here this guy is. He travels. He fills up stadiums, preaches the gospel. People's lives are changed. He said, if you could go back, what would you do? Less of that and be with my wife and kids more.
Yeah.
That'll put some things in perspective, right?
Absolutely.
And so you obviously had people who prayed with you, and you and Jenny really devoted yourself to prayer, navigating those big transitions of taking a risk, God putting a dream inside of not only you, but her as well, in some sense. and you getting out of the boat and chasing. But then also you talked about that circle of people, myself, your brother, some of your closest friends. And what would be some things that a guy would look for in like what's called a wisdom circle? Like you trust them and you believe that they could say some things that would help you navigate some situations you don't really know. What kind of people do you look for that you would put in that type of circle?
First, like the man for me, I want to look and see how he treats his wife. Like that's like the first thing for me. What kind of husband are you? If he's not married, that's obviously a different thing. But most of, in my age group, they're married. But like, how are you treating your wife? How do you talk about her when she's not around? How is your relationship with your kids? You know what I mean? Like, I want to know that guy is the same way in front of you, his pastor, as he is with me on the ball field. Like, just a real guy, man. And I've talked to you about it. I got 5 of them, and that's, I've got a lot of acquaintances, but I got 5 in my circle that I can say, hey, bro, I need you. Pray with me at 3:00 in the morning. Like, I know I can do that with you. I know I can do that with them.
Try to wait till like 5, 5 a.m.
Yeah.
So you look for a guy based off the fruit he produces in his closest circle.
Correct.
Right? Because he could be anything with us occasionally.
Correct.
But in that, like, you know what I'm saying? Like the wife and kids see him the most or should.
Right.
And they get the good, the bad, and the ugly with them.
Yeah.
What are some other things you look for?
So, good or bad, I don't know, but it'd be like work ethic. I want that guy he don't have to have a tool belt on. I mean, he can be behind a computer or whatever. A good work ethic, man. Like, and probably the biggest thing is just let your yes be yes and your no be no. Not like you said something to me. It wasn't to me, but I was there when you were saying it to the guy. It was a landscaping company, and we were trying to cut a yard for a guy, and we were trying to fit it in. I think that, he ended up saying yes and couldn't pull through on it. And you said something that I've never forgotten. You said, when you say yes to all these things and they start falling through, like, you become, in my eyes, and like, you just put it out there because that's who you are. You'll say it. You told him, like, you become undependable. Like I'm thinking now I can't depend on you. So, like, say no when you need to say no and say yes when you need to say yes. You can't say yes to everything,
Yeah, I don't remember who that was, but I'm sorry if I hurt your feelings.
No, but
no, it's true though. You need people. Their yes is a yes, and their no is a no. I will say this too: when you talked about work ethic, because you are a blue collar guy. Like, one thing, I feel like if you don't know how to do it, you'll figure out how to do it. Type thing, right? With anything, especially when it comes to building stuff. Pastor Matt's like that. Yeah. Mike Ahern's like that. Like, there's a bunch of guys. And not that you necessarily need guys that can build houses from the ground up. I think one of the things is drive. Like, you like guys that have drive and ambition. And I think a lot of leaders do. I think a lot of high capacity people do. Like, we're attracted. Like, they don't have to be in the same trade or the same business as us or whatever. But, you get attracted by people who build things, whatever it is.
Correct.
And put drive and ambition. Man, we could spend a whole podcast on a culture of laziness and no drive, no ambition, which is a lack of vision for family, marriages, business. How many guys do we know that just clock in and clock out, and the majority of their life is spent figuring out what they're going to eat, what they're going to drink, and how their mediocre college football team is doing?
Right. And the reason I said work ethic, because 99% of the time, it's going to be a mirror image of what his family looks like and how he's leading his family. If you're a lazy worker, you're not going to be this awesome leader at the house. It's just, that's your ethic. That's how you operate. You know what I mean? You see guys that are, not all the time, but a good hard worker. He's going to work hard at everything he does. He's going to work hard at his family. He's going to work hard at the job. He's going to work hard when he's volunteering for the church. Like, it's just in him. So, that's one of the things that I look for,
For sure, because you got drive in the workplace or in the workspace. You most likely will have drive in the family. Also, the faith space.
Mm-hmm.
You know, like if your yes isn't a yes when it comes to work, man, your yes isn't a yes when it comes to things with the Lord.
Absolutely.
Because that, like, God is faithful and true, right?
Yeah.
Jesus, I mean, he's coming back as the writer known as faithful and true. He is consistent and he doesn't lie. His yes is a yes and his no is a no. If you hang out with him a lot, it is impossible for you to be half-hearted, committed, you know?
Right.
Like you will learn my yes is a yes and my no is a no. And so a lot of times it's the fruit.
Yeah.
You see the fruit in their lives. So you look for men who produce good fruit in all areas of their life that have good, strong work ethics. What else do you look for?
Probably what kind of is drawing them, and like how their faith is just 100% in Jesus. Do they waver at all? And you can tell by certain things they say, situations they're in. And again, it's like, just be the same person you are to me if we're talking in the church parking lot as we are on the ball field. Like, I just want that dude to be real,
Yep.
you know?
Yeah.
That, I think that's the
Authenticity, man.
right.
Yeah.
Right.
One thing I know about a wisdom circle, I think every guy should have a small group of men, and I think it's very rare to find, but every guy should have a small group of men that are his foxhole guys, that are his, his glass of water guys, that are his go-tos in dire situations. But I think one thing we need to be aware of, for me, in that circle, the guy that's in that circle, is he trying to reshape what I'm bringing to the table in the sense of like controlling it, or is he helping me figure it out like it's a math problem?
Right.
You know what I'm saying? Like because I've found a lot of guys that are driven, but are driven, maybe too driven. Maybe they're driven to the point of, hey, look at me. What'll happen is they'll get invited in spaces like that to become the alpha of the space. Well, the space is really about our lives together, not a singular focus, right? And I think you got to be really careful if you let a guy in there that's basically turning you into a puppet, telling you what to do, because you won't even realize it. Sometimes subconsciously, you'll just start making every decision based off what that one person says.
Right. Yeah.
And a good leader will do stuff like this in circles like that. Like, I know when you came to me with question or with thoughts of doing something, we throw out questions. Well, how's that going to impact you financially?
Right.
What's the best case? What's the worst case scenario? What's Jenny think? What about the kids? What do you think? You know what I'm saying?
Right.
Are you capable? So what it does is, I think in those circles, one of the best things that you could bring somebody, or you could be looking for in somebody, is someone who asks questions to help them consider every angle of a big decision they're going to make, right?
Yeah.
And not one of the things I love about you, you're not always a yes man either. I think we need to make sure we put some people at our table that isn't always a yes
Right.
man. We need to make sure they're all for the man, but not necessarily a yes man. Because I know things with like church, I was like, man, I think we might do this. And you're like, well, why are we going to do that? Like, what's the purpose? And you're asking questions to understand, are you sure that's in the best interest of this or that? And I think it's really important to have some people that you can trust enough to push back, but also not hijack the moment and just take the reins of your life, because that can create division.
Correct. Yeah.
Huge division.
I think those guys have a problem with authority, because if me and you are doing whatever job, you're going to have to submit to me on some of those jobs.
For sure.
If you're on a job site with me and we're installing something that you have nothing about, you're going to submit to my authority on that job.
100%.
Here today, I'm submitting to your authority. Here,
on a podcast.
right? This isn't my thing, dude. Like, you're it's it. Like, I submit to your authority when you're up there on the stage on Sunday. When you're on platform, like, I'm under you, and I'm fine with that. But there's some guys that aren't in any situation. They're just not. So.
Well, it's because you're a man of faith. Because when you showed up here, you're like, hey, what are we going to talk about? I said, I don't know. And so you had no, you're like, all right, I trust you.
Yeah.
Let's go into it blind.
Yeah.
But I just had a series of questions to ask, and this is good. This is good to think about, and because there are like a lot of things like with talking about the closeness of the relationship, there are a lot of things that I call and just default to you, like, hey, how do I do this? Like, what do you think about this?
Right.
Like, I know a lot of that is revolving around ministering to people too, because of there's things that you've experienced that I haven't, and I'll be like, hey, man, listen to this. Mm-hmm. How do I help them? And you'd be like, man, if that was me, I would do that. And I trust that. But I also invited that. You don't just always call me and be like, hey, man, I think you need to preach on this on Sunday.
Right.
In fact, you've never did that. Yeah. You'd be surprised how many people have, but you never have did that. And one thing that I appreciate, but I don't call you too and say, hey, you should do a shower enclosure like this,
And
now
people don't think about it that way.
Right.
When you're doing that to a pastor, it's like, it's the same thing. You should fix that car a different way, bro. Wire it this way. That's how it's making you feel. So.
Yeah, sometimes it does, for sure.
Yeah.
All right, so getting you a good wisdom circle, devoting it to prayer, and then let's talk about this, excuse my French, but getting the nuggets to actually take the risk. I mean, I wouldn't take you to Las Vegas.
Right.
Based off my 12 years of knowing you.
Neither one of us do.
We have no business on the strip.
And you remember how we planned our last New York trip, right?
Yeah, like impulsively, like just on the fly, hiding it from the wives on credit cards.
Yeah.
But they loved it.
They loved it. They loved it. Yeah.
Getting out of the boat, taking the risk.
So a good segue, because I read a book that Ben gave me. This was back in 2008. Leaving me, he said, read this. If you want to walk on water, you have to get out of the boat. And that was now I can't sit here and tell you what was all in the book now, but at that time, at that season of my life, you know what I mean? Like, it said everything I needed to hear. But you have to. Like, I knew that I wanted more time with the family. I knew that I wanted a closer relationship with Jesus Christ, And for me, I couldn't get as close as I wanted to with being off one weekend a month. So I'm looking at like I'm off 12 Sundays a year. I mean, it was terrible. Yeah. Some men can do it, like I couldn't. You know what I mean? My family life was suffering. Jenny's suffering. I'm on graveyard, and everybody's got to be just
quiet
walk around the house. It's tough on them, man. You think you're the only one really suffering with that shift work. Like, they're suffering big time, dude, So, but you have to, if you want that great reward, you have to take a great risk. And the great risk was, I'm going from 80,000 to zero if I do this. Because like you said earlier, I didn't have clientele. I didn't have recurring stuff on the books.
Nothing was guaranteed.
Nothing. Like, we're starting at scratch. And like back then, being totally transparent, we got $1,000 in savings. It's like, it's tough. We got 4 kids we're raising. I mean, it's tough. So, but
that was a huge risk.
It was a big risk, and but look at the reward now,
Yeah, seeing God show up,
100%,
actually show up.
Yeah.
And I think it's huge. So you got to get out the boat. You got to have some men that will encourage you out the boat, which is really cool too, because not only, having 4 or 5 of us that are like, man, we agree, take a chance. But I remember having that conversation with being like, hey, here's some things I know we're going to need because we're working on the chapel up at the church. And there's other people. Like, not only are we encouraging you to get out of the boat, but kind of in a way, your circle will get out the boat with you a little bit and be like, hey, well, because when you were starting the glass business, one of my favorite things about you that I think men should get if you're going to take a big leap of faith. Listen, when you take a leap of faith with God, you're on God's terms, not yours. One of my favorite things that you say, I'll do whatever. Like, what's up? We'll mow grass. We'll build this. We'll go do that. You were like, whatever. You knew that obviously you have a knack for glass installation and installing and doing things like that. Like you've got that down pretty much to a science. But you were like, if I don't have a ton of jobs for that, I will do whatever to provide for my family and see how God's going to show up.
Yeah.
And I think that's a really like a humble heart posture for men to take. A lot of guys won't take risks because they can't see that it's going to work the exact way that they think it should work.
And it never does.
Right.
It never does.
Like I think about when Jesus told Peter, when he said, Peter, who do you say that I am?
Mm-hmm.
And he says that you're the Messiah, right? Upon what Peter said, he says, upon this rock, I'll build my church, right? And so Peter probably knew, man, I'm going to be in leadership. He probably had zero idea, though, that in leadership, he would have to deny Christ 3 times, be reinstated, get filled with the Holy Spirit. After he just watched Jesus die, a month, 2 months before that, walk outside in front of 3,000 people and preach the gospel.
Yeah.
He had no idea he was going to have to go through all of that to get to the promise of Jesus. Jesus didn't lay it all out for him either. Like, hey, this is exactly what it's going to look like. In fact, I think about the Last Supper. He was like, man, listen, if you want to be a part of my kingdom and what I'm doing, you're going to have to take the lowest place of servanthood.
Right.
And you have to be willing to wash people's feet.
Yeah. If it was all laid out for us, why would we need faith? If I could look 9 months down the road and say, oh, man, that's going to happen, and I'm going to get that job, that's going to be, why would I need faith? You know what I mean? We wouldn't need it at all.
Would you say in your big leap of faith, your risky business, would you say there's probably many days where you and Jenny just kind of looked and was like, all right, Lord, we just trust you?
Absolutely. And I've asked her 50 times, when transitioning mainly from the mill to the first glass business with the partner, I was like, did I make a mistake? Did I make a mistake? She's like, no, absolutely not. Because Satan starts creeping in, and I say, man, I had $80,000 a year in the bank. All I had to do was show up. Safe. I just had to show up. Like, easiest job there was, But what's the sacrifice, Then God says, hey, why did I call you to this? You asked me for more family time. You asked me for more time to serve me, to be at church, to volunteer. I'm giving you the out. This is how you do it. Like, do you really want it? Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and I think about when Peter got out of the boat. He was walking on water till he took his eyes off Jesus, right? And so I think also it's imperative, like you said you had at least 50 times you questioned it. I think it's okay to give people a hall pass to question it.
Yeah.
As long as your questions are directed, towards God and your eyes stay on them.
Right.
Like there's been, in 8 years of pastoring Bold City Church, there's been many conversations, Tiffany and I would be like, hey, what are we doing? Should we be doing this?
Yeah.
But you know what we do? We get up and we just keep going and keep doing it until the Lord gives us something like, hey, no, you shouldn't be doing it.
Right.
You're an idiot. We got to get you out of there.
Yeah.
He's never did that. And we just keep showing up and keep trusting that God's going to show up, and he keeps showing up, man. Yeah. And I think if there's a guy listening to this who is filling the pool, like you got some convictions, your wife, your marriage isn't as healthy as it should be. Your kids are feeling neglected, tablets and YouTube, and their friends are raising them more than you are, right? You've always put provision in the sense of money as the number one priority. So you are sacrificing your family's spiritual journey on the altar of a timesheet or a bank account. Man, if you've got some convictions like, man, something probably needs to change. All right, well, you need to, one, start really praying about it. And if you're married, with your wife.
Yeah.
2, get you a wisdom circle around you. Get you, I would say, at least 2 to 5 guys that are around you that you trust, that you love. They love you. They love your family. Start talking to them, encouraging, getting encouraged by them, navigating life with them. And then just really get the faith to eventually say, you know what? I'm going to have to step off the edge and just trust God.
Yeah.
And make sure your heart's in the right place. Because what you don't want to do, I don't want anybody listening to this and be like, I'm quitting my job.
Yeah, right.
And then their wife comes home in the middle of the day and they're 37 years old with joysticks in their hand playing Call of Duty. What are you doing?
Yeah.
Just waiting on God to show up.
Yeah.
we're not giving anyone a hall pass to do that.
So here, this will help with that. So in that first transition, and like what I was doing, like I was pressure washing. I was like literally hanging doors. I put the doors in this
right,
chapel,
the
barn doors. So at night, had a guy call me. He wasn't close in the circle, but he is a great guy, and he said, "Hey man, I need a dude to run security at one of these internet cafes from 4 till 2 in the morning. It pays $9 an hour, and it's all the snacks you can eat." I'm like, I'm in, dude.
Snacks.
Yes,
Little
bro.
Debbie, I'm in.
Yes, right. So I did my thing during the day and did that 4 days a week. You know what I mean? But like, that's what I had to do. You know what I mean?
Bro, you were a video poker bouncer.
Yes, bro. And didn't even have a gun. I was like, "Luke, do I get a gun?" He's like, "Nah, just a shirt that says security." I was like, "Sweet, bro, let's go."
Oh my, I can't wait to tell this at your funeral one day. Yeah. Oh my gosh.
But that's
the willingness to do whatever.
That's what I did, man. And it was like, what, an extra couple $100, a week. But like, hey, I did what I had to do.
That's right. That's right. And a couple $100 would put at least a little food on the table.
For sure.
But it wasn't like you were sitting around on Xbox Live.
No,
like,
man.
oh man, yeah,
Are you willing? Are you willing?
Or out in the boat saying, "Yeah, man, I'm fishing.
Yeah.
I'm fishing."
Getting food, providing food. I mean, we know those fish cost about $300 a pound once you get them to the table. So,
exactly. And especially the way gas is now. So another thing, I'm going to transition a little bit here that I think was really cool. Watching, really, this probably would be an incredible subject to bring Jenny in on. But you were in a marriage, and then you remarried and basically started another family with your family. Mm-hmm. One of the coolest things that I've watched was how both you and Jenny loved your ex-wife, Lindsay, who recently passed away. Mm-hmm. But even like at her celebration of life, just seeing like how there wasn't, one of my favorite things, there's just wasn't ever like this massive wall, especially in the past 10 or 12 years where like she's my ex-wife and that didn't work and I'm hurt or whatever, where she couldn't be around. I love watching you guys like co-parent and encourage your two oldest to, man, have something to do with their mom, love their mom. Like even you two, you and Jenny, like even ministering to your ex-wife. I think it's just really cool. I think it's very rare. Can you talk a little bit about what that's been like for you and Jenny to keep that door open to even like your ex-wife during that season?
I mean, I think the motivation for it was always Brooke and Bryce, the kids. You know what I mean? They were 4 and 5 when, we got divorced. Jenny, I was, it was about 2.5 years. It was just me and them. And Jenny comes in, they're 4 and 5 years old, but like always showing them like this is how, if it goes down like this is how you're gonna do it. How are you gonna walk through this situation? You're gonna do it how Jesus would do it. And it's like corny, dude. I know, like WWJD bracelet, but like really, if you just slow down and say, how would Jesus treat my ex? What would he do? You know what I mean? So that's what we've always tried to do. Like, it was hard. It was really hard in the beginning. More so for Jenny than it was me. I had a long relationship with my first wife. But Jenny just really revealed who she is and who she is in Christ. Like, they had an awesome relationship. So much to where she would come over and they would pray together, dude. Like, I'm like, this doesn't happen, but it speaks to who she is. And it's, she learned it. She learned it by her faith walk. You know what I mean? Mm-hmm.
Surrendering to Christ, watching the Holy Spirit move in and through her. And I guess maybe that's probably something I would like to highlight, man, is that surrendering to the Holy Spirit. Like, people you think you can't forgive, He'll empower you to forgive them.
Absolutely.
To the place where birthday parties and graduations, things of that nature are not weird and awkward
Right.
anymore because there's just been so much grace and mercy poured out in that situation.
Right.
And could you tell guys, like, dude, it's actually possible because I've lived it.
Yeah. One thing that would really that I would like for them to look back on your own life. Now, if it's clean and pearly white, that's great.
You're full of it. You're full of it.
But if it's not, like, I just know the places that I've come from, the things I've done that only me and God know that I've done, you know, that He still just chases after me, you know. So the things that my first wife struggled with, like, God forgave me of things that were just as bad. And He never, ever, He had all the reasons to throw me to the side, but He never did. So why would I do that with her? Like, you know, that's,
Yeah.
if it's the woman at, you know, at the well, you know what I mean? Cast the first stone thing, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
But,
Yeah. And I think that's huge. I think so many of us want the grace and the mercy of God to be evident in our life because of what we've done. But then we forget about it when it comes to other people who have offended us. And one of the things we do freedom here at the church, which you're aware of that and have did that and stuff. But it talks about being unoffendable, like getting to a place where, you walk so close with the Lord, and it is possible that the things that offend you or could offend you, they don't any longer. Right. And you give up your right to be right. You give up your right to stay in offense because, I mean, if you would have stayed offended, it would have, one, probably hindered your spiritual journey. Two, would have probably hindered your Jenny's, your current wife's spiritual journey. But then three, really impacted your children,
Yes.
Like you would have demonstrated a life that says it's okay to be bitter. It's okay to hold things over each other's head. Also, one of the coolest things about you guys being like, you know what? We're going to love her. We're going to have a relationship with her because a healthy her is good for not just us, but is good for the kids as well. But I think it really, because I watched it at an altar right in front of my face, I think it really opened her up to receiving the mercy and grace of God.
Yeah.
Because she's watching it being demonstrated. Mind you, without getting into a ton of details, like all of us, she'd been through some rough things, but she'd been offended by people who carry the mantle of ministry.
Right.
And because she watched it demonstrated through normal, ordinary, relational people, I really think it positioned her on that Easter in 2018 to really receive a touch from God and surrender her life to Christ, which is incredible.
Yeah, I believe that. So then all of that leading up to 2018, almost 20 years before that, it's totally worth it, right?
Yeah.
It's totally worth it. I'd like 2 months before she passed, the last time she came to church, I mean, she just is out there hugging me and Jenny and just sobbing, you know what I mean? It's like, it's all worth it. We have a big family picture in front of the Bold City thing, and it's all of us. It's everybody, man,
Yeah.
Why wouldn't you want it like that?
Yeah.
Why
absolutely.
wouldn't you want it like that? If that first marriage didn't work out, why would you want it the other way? Why would you want to fight and fuss and, be bitter? Why wouldn't you want it this way?
Here's something else I just thought of, man. I wonder what that would have looked like if you wouldn't have took the risk of saying, you know what? I need more time at home, more time with my wife, because one of the primary things that would shut that whole ability of God to move in and through that, to shut it all down, would be if your wife was like, I don't want anything to do with your ex-wife.
Yeah. Yeah.
But because she had a spiritual leader in the house, she took initiative of her own spiritual journey as well. Like, she surrendered to the spot where she was like, you know what? She's part of the family.
Yeah.
Like, let's love her.
Yeah.
Let's help her. Let's encourage her. Let's build her. It's better for all of us if so. And when I remember when I did Lindsay's celebration of life, one of the things I wanted to highlight was just the power of the relationship with the ex-wife and the current wife.
Yeah.
Like, they're like genuine best interests, good friends, sincere, not some fake we get along thing.
Right.
But like you said, you come home and find them praying together.
Yeah.
And encouraging each other, man.
Yeah.
And I know that was the real deal. And I used to make jokes about it all the time to Jenny. I'd be like, dude, somebody needs to capture this because this is so not normal. I know it's a real deal because I had 2 years with Jenny was my aunt, your wife, right next to me almost every day of the week, like helping me to do church stuff, you know,
and
ministry.
that wouldn't have ever happened if not for the Faith Leap. You know what I mean?
Oh, for sure.
You know.
And by the way, she's incredible because she's like hyper organized. Like she is the best adult babysitter I've ever met in my life. I mean, like people be like, dude, you're doing a good job at pastoring. Yeah, because I got her handling all the stuff that I'm terrible at.
I remember one of the first conversations you and I had when she left. It was like day 2 when she come over to Hall's Integrity. I was like, hey, bro. I was like, what's up? I said, dude, she just cleaned up 1,800 of my emails. You're like, bro, I hate you. I've got to get off the phone with me right now.
Before we started this podcast, I got 933. It's building back up. Yeah, which was one of the things that I love too. This is total side note. Listen, if you're in ministry or in business or anything, having both her and my wife have access. They had access to social media. They had access to my email, everything, complete protection thing. Not only did they help keep things in line for me and help me stay on top of things, but also it was like this integrity thing. Like
it's an accountability thing, yeah.
If I ever was to do something shady, like it would be way easier to get caught because too many people have access to everything that I have access to.
And that's not a bad thing.
Yeah, I mean, I'm gonna have to go get me like a Boost mobile phone, like a dope phone is what we would call it back in the day. Like, and people would be like, "Hey, what are you carrying that around for?" Yeah. Like, I'm gonna have to really try. But I watched Jenny in close proximity. I watched the genuineness. Like we would pray when Lindsay would be battling something or going through something in the middle of the day, man. Yeah. Like she very easily could have ripped off 100 things wrong with her, talked bad about her. Never one time in 2 years did I ever hear her do that.
Yeah, that's one thing that I am, like it blows me away that my oldest 2 will never be able to look back and say that Jenny, the stepmom, bashed the real, like never, ever, ever. And like their relationship now is, I mean, I can't even describe it. You know what I mean? Yeah. They love her like, you know.
Like she is their
like
mom.
She is, you know what I mean? You know, so it's just.
Definitely God's provision towards them too,
circle.
Man.
Yeah, absolutely.
I'd encourage men and women, if women are listening to this, if you're a step parent, man, just steer clear of tearing the other parent down.
Yes.
Like, don't help build those walls.
Yeah.
You know, like that's just, even though you might think it's justified and it might be right, don't do that because what you're going to do is you're going to create something that the kids will spend the rest of their life trying to unravel.
Yeah, because you, like the husband and wife, like Lindsay and I had a connection, obviously, right? We were married. I didn't have a connection with her like Brooklyn and Bryce did.
Right.
Like that's their mom no matter what. That's their mom. Like my dad was, I mean, that could be a whole nother 12-hour podcast, you know what I mean? But like, he was not a good man, but like, I don't want you telling me that. Like that was my father. That was my dad. I know how he was, but like when you're tearing down that other parent, you're cutting way deeper than you think you are because it's their mother or their father. Like they look up to them no matter how bad they are, you know, but they're not as bad in their eyes as they are in your eyes. It's a totally different relationship, you know what I mean? So you have to set aside that we didn't work together as husband and wife. But they can still be good parents, you know what I mean?
For sure. Yeah, 100%. And being a kid who's went through a number of divorces, I think you always hold out hope that if you have a parent that's going through something rough, that they'll come back around.
Yes. Yeah.
Because there's a natural longing inside of you to have a relationship with them. And then 2, the step parent who bashes the current parent or whatever, or the birth parent, what they do is they think, you know, they're just speaking freely, or they'll always chalk it up. Well, I'm just telling the truth. You could tell the truth, but why do you keep telling the same truth to people who already know the truth? It's because there's something internally wrong with you.
Right.
And what that does is, I notice it like I've heard that about my parents before, and it makes me bitter, not towards one, but towards both.
Yeah.
Because I know you're bad mouthing them, and
Yeah.
I know that they're not doing a good job at what they're called to do.
Right.
And so it makes me bitter towards both.
If Jenny would have done that, Brooke and Bryce would have hated Jenny.
Yeah, they would.
That relationship and had a big wedge between it.
And now they need her more than ever.
Yes.
Now they need her more than ever. So that's huge.
Yeah.
All right, last thing, because we're getting short on time. One of my biggest things, and how deep we go into it is completely up to you. One of my favorite things about you and watching how God has moved in and through your life is you, through the power of the Holy Spirit, with your wife by your side, conquered a pornography issue. That was birthed in you really young.
Oh, yeah.
Super young. And I, in Bold Men, we're going to talk about fleeing sexual sin.
Yeah.
In one of our 8 major teachings. So we're going to have a whole month to really address that and talk about it. But it's the one sin in the Bible that tells you to literally flee, to run. It's an aggression word. It's to move quickly.
Right.
It doesn't tell you to stand and fight. It tells you to run, you know?
Yeah.
So enlighten us a little bit about what you battled through and how God showed up.
So, yeah, I mean, it did start early with me, and, that goes back into my father issue and those wounds. But it was probably, 12, 13 years old, So I had
back in the VHS days.
Yeah, right. Well, back when, you couldn't just open your phone, like you had to actually go in a store when you were 18 and hope a dude was working the counter and not some gray-haired old lady. You know what I mean? Like, it was harder back then. But, so I like to, when I'm talking to guys about it, I'm like, dude, I got 25 years in the game. Like, I can tell you what you're thinking. Mm-hmm. I can pick through how you're trying to hide it. I can tell you how you feel afterwards. Like, I was good at it. I hid it for a long time, If you're asking me how, if there's a guy listening to this that is struggling with it,
Oh, there is. I guarantee you.
There's a lot of them. There's more to it than just picking up the Bible and reading God's Word. Because, I've literally had thoughts while reading the Bible wanting to look at it. Like when you're entangled in it, right? So the first thing is somebody that will walk through it with you. You'll never defeat it. Whoever's listening to this, whatever man is listening to this, this is the gospel. You'll never defeat it without an accountability partner. Ever. Ever, ever, ever. Because you can lie to yourself better than anyone else.
And that's good.
I'm going to quit. That's the last time I'm going to do it. 36 hours later, you're doing it again. I feel like crap. Like it's the needle in the vein. It's an addiction, 100%. Changes the chemicals in your brain like they've studied it. It's not just, I like to look at it. Like it's an addiction. So you won't get through. I'm not going to say you need a counselor. Some will. I've talked to Christian counselors about it. But a good Christian gentleman that I worked at the mill with, when I finally got fed up with it, and for being totally transparent, you really get fed up with it when your wife catches you. That's when most men are going to get fed up with it. Like, it's just who we are, right? You're not going to stop on your own
until you realize something's
really, really out of whack here, or you get caught. I got caught, and that's somewhere you don't want to be. So
it's easy to do it and not think it's going to cost you anything.
And it does. And, I'm not hurting anybody yet. Yes, you are. You're cheating on God, because if you're looking at a woman lustfully, you're cheating anyway. It's just like laying with another woman. You're cheating your wife, if we can be frank, out of that sexual encounter.
Mm-hmm. Which you were designed for.
Which you were designed for. So you're getting what you want, and she's not. So
the mental side of it, where when you are intimate with your wife, you're comparing
living a double life, man. I'm telling you, you're living a double life. It's hard to keep up that facade. You know what I mean? But that accountability partner, an old guy named Skip, great Christian man. I come to him. I was broken. I was like, here's what I need. I need you to hold me accountable. He said, you know what you're asking? I said, I think so. He said, you're going to feel like a 7-year-old kid because it's going to be rough. He said, if you truly want me to hold you accountable, like this is what it's going to take. And he did, dude, like every night calling me, what are you watching? What are you looking at? Like, bro, and you can put the safe eyes on your phone and all that, but like when you really get serious about it, the wife's got to be involved.
That's right.
And a lot of guys just like their skin just crawled, like they just got that cold sweat. But
Because they don't want to tell her because they've been cheating on her.
Right. So, and dude, I'm telling you, it's rough. It's rough on that woman. Like that was some of the toughest times that we walked through, and we've got, 15 years under our belt with that now, but again, having a godly wife that can not allow it or whatever, say, oh, that's just a guy. Like it took her a while to understand it, and she'll still say, I just don't get it. Like, just don't look at it, Right. Just don't look, I was like, babe, but it's like literally telling the drug addict, just don't do it. Here's my advice for you, heroin addict. Just don't shoot up heroin. Right. It doesn't work like that. You know what I mean? Like, right. It's an addiction that you have to walk through. You know what I mean? So, and don't just read the Bible thing and think that's going to work. You have to. Like, you got to renew your mind. You got to renew your mind. If you say, I'm not going to look at porn. I'm not going to look at porn. I'm not going to look at porn. And you're just in this room by yourself. What's on your brain? Porn. Like, so what are you going to replace that with? Like, I remember you telling me, like, bro, just get up and literally run. Dude, just like
start jogging, man.
Like, just get outside and run. Like, burn off that energy. You know what I mean?
Wear yourself out so you can't even look at porn. Yeah. Some of y'all might need to run like 10 or 12 miles.
But when you really, I mean, we sing the songs about break my heart for what breaks yours, and God just, search me and all. But like when you really start thinking about the like dirty side of that, man, because you're sinning against God, but you're sinning against your own body, man. It's tough, and it's that taboo sin where, I remember probably year 2 or 3 maybe, you gave an altar call for guys struggling with porn, and it was like crickets, bro. I'm like, bro. Yeah, nobody's going down. Nobody's going down.
Changed a little bit now. They'll respond a little bit.
But, going down and telling somebody, man, I'm really struggling with negativity, or man, I'm struggling with drinking, that's fine. But when it's a different attachment to it. When I go down and look a dude in the eyes, or a woman in the church and say, I'm struggling with looking at porn. It's different, man.
Yeah, they just feel dirtier.
Yeah, for sure.
Because of the perversion. And one of the things too, man, fleeing, learning to run, getting the accountability, all that is important. But also counting the cost. You talk about what you feel when you got to confess that to your wife when your wife catches you. Mm-hmm. But also, you and I have had a lot of conversations about this before. Man, that thing, like porn, is such a vicious cycle. It puts you in at one end and it keeps circling around. And every time you circle around, it pushes the limits a little bit more and more and more and more. And what happens is, we see statistically a lot of times if a guy hangs out in pornography for a really long time, he eventually will act upon it because the screen's not going to be enough. Yeah. And dude, and we think about even our past sexual experiences before we get married. This is why we believe in like cutting soul ties, dealing with that type of stuff before you get married. It's so not fair. There's so many men that go home that are intimate with their wife, and their wife is trying to live up to some expectation that's unrealistic and she doesn't even know exists because of some fantasy world that he's been in or some past sexual sin that he's lived in that he hasn't dealt with yet.
Right.
And so think about that, man. Like just like the disaster that can create in a marriage. And it's like a landmine. You don't even know somebody knows it's there.
Right.
Right. He subconsciously might not even realize it's blowing up his marriage. But the wife most often has zero idea. And it is, I get that it is really, really difficult to confess and do that. However, like James says, right? Like your healing is on the other side of that confession and that accountability that comes with that confession.
Right.
Because if we can keep lying to ourselves, oh, I'm just going to cold turkey. I'm done. I'm done.
Not
I'm done
gonna
on my
happen.
own.
Not going to happen.
Until somebody that is physically attractive, we know guys, like our eyes and our ear gates, let her say something sweet or let her look appealing, right? We're moved by that in an intimate and sexual way. Ladies, they need their feelings involved, right? And stuff like that. But visually, just see something attractive, and
It's a trigger.
Right there.
It's a trigger.
And when you confess, you get high accountability, but two, you also get the prayer support, especially if you're wife. And you should probably tell them, because you have a better understanding of this. Like, they should give their wife some grace for not understanding and being upset. You just cheated on her.
Exactly. Like, so we're back to what we were talking about earlier. Empathize with her. What if it was her and you didn't have the problem with it, and she's doing that? So you're immediately going to say, what the freak is wrong with me? Like, why don't she want me?
Exactly.
You know?
Why am I not good enough?
Yeah. Why don't she want me? So she has every right. Like, and we had to talk. I was like, you can leave me if you want. Like, you can leave me. You have that right. And she does. I mean, they do.
Biblical grounds.
Biblical grounds, you know what I mean? Because every look, you're talking about infidelity every time you did that, so count it. Like, you can't.
But the convenience of us makes us forget how costly it is.
Right.
You know what I'm saying? It's almost like a gas station going in and buying a bottle of water or buying a soda. It's so convenient now that we don't realize that, hey, that thing's not $1.99.
Right.
That's a divorce. That's 2 kids that don't trust marriage. If you got 2 kids or 4 kids or 3 kids, whatever, the ripple effect of that, right? And then also your mind, your sanity, like, you can't even have a decent relationship with a female because everything turns into a sexual opportunity because you're looking through this perversion lens.
And the relationship with females, I 100% agree with, but the bad part about it is your relationship with Christ is horrible, man. It's horrible. You don't want to raise your hands in church. Like, you
can't worship.
You can't worship. You got this weight on you, man. Like, it's
a stronghold, man.
Yeah.
And it is demonic oppression. And you got to get out from under that covering. And it starts with getting fed up.
Yeah.
You got, I pray that there's a group of men that get sick and tired of being in bondage.
Yeah, because that's what you are. You're a slave to it. Like, if it would have had health consequences, I'd be dead. So any man listening to that, if this had the same consequence
That's a powerful
as
statement.
meth or heroin, you'd be dead. Because spiritually, you probably already are.
Dude, that's like so many layers right there. That's so deep of a statement. But because it's not meth or heroin, we think.
And that's where you tell yourself it's not hurting me in any way, but
killing your spirit, though.
Spiritually, you are
mentally too,
a walking zombie.
Exactly.
Yep.
And so it kills it. However, we know that by the blood of Christ, you could be set free, right?
Yes.
By the confession and repentance, the changing of your mind and the confession of sin, you can rewire the grid. Mm-hmm. You can turn it around, go in a new direction because of compassion and grace and mercy. God can restore marriages, relationships, and you can walk in freedom because, ever since I've known you, you've walked in freedom for this, and you've been able to help, encourage me. Right. They don't always like what you have to say, but at the end of the day, it doesn't matter.
Right.
You're not telling them what to do based off a book you read. Right. You're actually telling them off, hey, I experienced this.
Yeah.
Like, I actually know what I'm talking about because I wore your shoes.
I kind of approach it as what I'm the chief. I was the chief of all sinners.
Like Paul said.
Paul said, so I was good at it. I was really good at it, at hiding it and just having that double life. But when your head hits that pillow, dude, and your wife is beside you, like, it's just, It's bad, dude. It's different. There's a demonic feel to it, dude. Like I would literally wake up in the middle of the night, Jason, and it would feel like I had a 500-pound blanket on top of me, and it was pushing me down in the mattress, dude. Like literally, and I'm trying to talk and I can't. And when I finally broke through and talked, something my mom always taught me, like just saying, I rebuke you in the name of Jesus. I can't tell you the nights that when that I did that, bro. And it's like at some point you got to go, this ain't flesh and blood, man. This is like spiritual stronghold stuff, man, you know?
And I would say this too, pornography is not something to play around with, to occasionally visit. You know, like you don't want to put yourself under the authority of anything that you want to have authority over.
Right.
And so you can't dance with this. You can't. No. And a lot of us inherit it as generational curses too. It's passed down from us. Yep. It was green lighted by parents and stuff before. It was okayed by a big brother. You know, we were brought into it by somebody that should be keeping us safe. You've got to deal with it because you don't want the sons to inherit the sin.
Right.
You know, we want to walk in true freedom with it. And that sense of that heaviness, I need guys to really understand that's a supernatural thing. Like that is supernatural oppressions. That is darkness resting on you. Mm-hmm. Does that mean you're not saved? No, that's not at all what I'm saying. But, you know, like for me, I mean, I hate when anyone denies Christ. But I really hate too when people claim Christ but walk in bondage.
Right.
Like Jesus came, like Colossians 2, he made a public spectacle of the enemy, mm-hmm. right? Mm-hmm. Triumphing over him with the work of the cross, right? Like Jesus has completely paid for restoration of our sexual health, our physical health, our mental health, all of that. It's up to us to say yes to that, take the necessary steps. And listen, just like detoxing off drugs, like you're going to feel the effects of that. Yeah. You're going to feel it. And you're going to have to earn trust back with some people that you violated.
Yeah.
But it is possible.
Yeah.
With consistency and faithfulness.
Yeah.
And so if a guy was listening to this right now and he's struggling with this and he listened to your story a little bit and was going to put some action items in place and start making some moves, what does he need to do first, second, third, fourth, fifth?
So first, we've covered the prayer, and if you've gotten to the point where you're fed up, accountability partner. Not the guy that's struggling with it too, because that's kind of the first thing to do. You know, because you can pat each other on your back. It's okay, bud. You know, it's no, that
only looked at it once today.
Right. Yeah. So a real accountability partner. And then there's a book that even for men that aren't struggling with it, that you should read by Stephen Arterburn, I believe it is, Every Man's Battle.
Yep.
That book, I've read it 3 or 4 times.
Even if you're not, you should read it.
That's what I'm saying. Yeah. Even if you're not, you should read it. It's written by pastors that tell their story, and it will read your mail. Like I'm reading it like, this was my life, dude. Mm-hmm. It's exactly verbatim what I was going through because it's the same with all of us. It's the same levels. It's the same stages that you go through. So prayer, accountability partner, book. I would say that your accountability partner, you have to be very careful choosing that. You got to have extreme trust with them. They can help you navigate talking about it with your wife. Because don't just go cold turkey either and over dinner, hey, baby, I've been struggling porn with the last 10 years. You know, I'd be like, you know,
can I get another piece of meatloaf?
Right. A lot of prayer with that too, and ask God to open doors. And listen, guys, your wife knows. Your wife knows. She knows, like my wife knew. Like she caught me to prove it, like to herself, but she knew.
She said something was going on.
Yeah, man, the intimacy in there. You know what I mean? You know, it's the guy shooting steroids that he's not making testosterone anymore. You know what I mean? So you're getting that fulfillment from somewhere else. So naturally, you're not going to desire to be with your wife. You're going to desire fantasy land. You know what I mean? So prayer, accountability partner, book, Every Man's Battle. That's like $15 on Amazon, like be the best $15 you ever spent. And then just
cheaper than a divorce.
Way cheaper, way cheaper. So Probably the accountability partner is the biggest thing. That person, like Skip Hugaboon, that was his name. He's still at the mill, still a great guy. We don't talk as much, as we used to, but like he helped me. He did it in a loving way to just look at me and kind of kick me in the nuggets and say, you got to get control of this, bro. Like, count the cost. Brother, Ben, he's count the cost. Mm-hmm. This fleeing moment here, or wife and 4 kids, your reputation. You've got Hall's integrity on your business. That word integrity, what does that mean to you? You know what I mean? Like, yeah.
It's all good.
Yeah.
And listen, if you're in Bold Men in the men's ministry with us, man, I would encourage you at our next leadership night next month to maybe come and find Jeff. And and you could do that by reaching out to myself or Pastor Matt. You don't even have to tell us if you're like, man, I'm not comfortable. I want to talk to a guy that I know has conquered this. He has defeated this, walked through it. I know that you would be willing to sit and talk with him. You've did that for a lot of guys in our church already. But the next leadership meeting, show up and just say, hey, I need to talk to Jeff, and we will connect you with him. If you're watching this, you see what he looks like. He looks like an extra off Duck Dynasty. So you just walk up and find him on a Sunday and just ask to connect with him, because he would gladly encourage you and to walk through it. Well, we've been at it for a while now. Thank you. Thanks for taking off work, coming and recording this. I've had fun.
Yeah, absolutely.
I think there's a lot of stuff people could take away learning from your life and your journey. And man, I appreciate it. And we'll have to do it again in the future.
I'll be ready.
All right. We'll see you guys next time.
Thanks for tuning in to the Bold City Podcast. To learn more about us, visit us at boldcity.church or download the Bold City Church app. To support this ministry and help us continue to reach people all around the world, visit boldcity.church/give.